But I want to pull away for a moment because the ambassador from Ukraine has been patiently awaiting this interview. We want to bring him in now to talk about a very different subject. It's been 6 months since Ukraine Airlines Flight 752 was shot down by Iran just outside the capital city of Tehran. All 176 people aboard were killed, including 55 Canadians and 30 permanent residents of Canada. Ever since, Iran has eluded calls to send the black boxes to France, blaming the global pandemic. But this federal government says that Iran does remain committed to transferring those black boxes as soon as possible. As I mentioned, Ukraine's ambassador to Canada, Andriy Shevchenko, has been patiently waiting this interview. I appreciate your patience and your time, Ambassador. Nice to see you.
Vashi, it's a pleasure, as always, to be with you.
I wanted to ask you, I think the last time we were doing so many interviews at the time of this crash, and it was just before the pandemic, I think the last time we spoke, there was some optimism that Iran would work with Ukraine, would get to the bottom of an investigation, or at least participate in one, not block one from happening. It really doesn't seem like that's the way things have gone down. We still don't even have the black boxes out of Iran at this moment. What are your thoughts on Iran's behavior during all of this?
I can just say that we are very disappointed and angry about the delay, and specifically about the delay of the readout of the black boxes. There was a clear promise of Iran to cooperate in terms of investigation, and I think we do not see enough. We should do so much better on that. And I think such a delay is a sign of disrespect towards the grieving families. We're in close touch with the Association of Families of the flight victims here in Canada, and I know that Minister Champagne spoke to them yesterday. Think about the pain they're going through without disclosure. And it's also a sign of disrespect towards the international community and towards our countries. We should change this.
What do you think has motivated this behavior from Iran? Because, like I said, the last time we spoke 4 months ago, there was a certain level of optimism among yourself, among Minister Champagne, that they would follow through on what they were promising to do.
Vashi, I would rather like to speak about what we should do in the future. And as we speak, there is an ongoing session of the ICAO Council happening in Montreal. ICAO is the International Civil Aviation Organization. And on Friday, the ICAO Council will listen to Iran's progress on the investigation and specifically on the delivery of the black boxes. In March, Iran promised to send the flight recorders to Ukraine and further on to France. That promise was unconditional, and this is why it was genuinely welcomed by the ICAO. We expect Iran to announce the details on Friday. We want Iran to be very specific on the timing of all the further procedures.
So yeah, let me just be clear on that. So you will be, or the people representing Ukraine at that meeting, as well as maybe Canada, are going to push for a specific timeline?
Precisely, and Ukraine is not a member of the ICAO Council. Canada is, and our friends from the United Kingdom, which was also affected by this tragedy, is a member of the ICAO Council. We are invited to the meeting, and again, we expect Iran to be very specific on the timing for the readout of the black boxes. And it's just the first step towards further investigation. And then we should proceed towards the proper compensation to the grieving families.
Let me ask you bluntly, Ambassador, do you believe whatever they're going to say on Friday? I mean, isn't there an inherent level of skepticism that we should have, given the promises that they've already made and not kept?
Well, I really believe it's in everyone's interest, and Iran also is expected to proceed with a proper investigation of this terrible tragedy. So I think everyone is really interested in a proper readout of the black boxes, and I think this is the way to move forward. And again, I'm very happy to say that we cooperate very closely with Canada on this, and I think this cooperation is very key to proper international approach to this terrible tragedy.
I have some more questions for you. I just want to warn you and our audience that I'm going to have to interrupt you at 6:30 just because we have a number of people joining us on their local stations. So I apologize in advance for doing that. On the question of investigations, I remember the last time we spoke, Ukraine was conducting a criminal investigation. Can you update us on the status of that?
Well, it's a long process, and again, it's very slow because I would say we don't have the best cooperation with the investigation team which was set up by Iran. Nevertheless, I'm absolutely sure that there is a way to move forward and to find the truth, the whole truth about this tragedy.
What might that way forward be if you don't have the full cooperation of authorities in Iran?
Well, I think the international cooperation is key. There is a group of 5 countries affected by the tragedy, which includes and which is led by Ukraine and Canada. And I think we should speak with one voice, and we should consider all the options. And again, if Iran chooses not to cooperate in terms of investigation, there are some other legal ways to go ahead.
What kind of ways might those be? And at what point do you decide to utilize them? Like, at what point do you say Iran has not cooperated for long enough?
We would not exclude any legal options, but for now, we are very focused on the ICAO Council meeting, which is happening just these days. And it's important because the next ICAO Council meeting is scheduled for October. So if we want to get something done with the help of the International Civil Aviation Organization, this is the time actually to focus on this.
Okay, I'm going to press pause on this for one moment, if you don't mind sitting there, while I welcome everyone watching on their local stations. This is Power and Politics on CBC News Network. I'm Vassy Kapellos. You can also catch us, our live stream, right around the world on the CBC News app, as well as on CBCNews.ca. As I mentioned, a warm welcome to everyone joining us in Ontario and Quebec on their local stations. It's great to have you with us. I am in the midst of a discussion with Ukraine's ambassador to Canada, Andriy Shevchenko. We have been discussing the investigation and basically all that has happened with Ukraine Airlines Flight 752. Of course, so many Canadians lost their lives when Iran shot that plane down. If you don't mind, Ambassador, one more question on that before I turn to another subject. I just want to make sure I'm clear for people who are watching, and especially we've had a number of family members of the victims on. I know you're speaking with one voice, but at what point does Iran's lack of cooperation turn into a change in, I guess, action from the government of Ukraine, from its partners in all of this? I guess the families are so frustrated, and I'm curious to gauge how frustrated you are.
Well, I can just say that if we speak about the readout of the black boxes, I would like us to speak about days or weeks rather than months, and I think it's long overdue. And I know that this is also the language that Canada chooses when it speaks to Iran. We want Iran this time to be very precise and very specific on the timing, and we do not want to see any other excuses why we cannot proceed with the proper readout of the black boxes and with the investigation.
Ambassador, you've spoken many times, not just in this interview, but on other times on this program, about the close relationship between Ukraine and Canada. I have to ask you, I read an interview in the Globe and Mail with President Zelensky, and he didn't really answer questions about whether or not Ukraine ended up voting for Canada at the Security Council. Did Ukraine vote for Canada?
Vassy, as you know, the secret ballot has been a long-time tradition in the United Nations, and I do not be the one who breaks this tradition. What I can say is, first, Canada had a very impressive campaign, and it helped to advance the Canadian values around the world, such as multilateralism, respect for international law, and many other things. And second, we will work with Canada, just like with Norway and Ireland, to make the world a better place.
I take your point, and I respectfully understand that it's a secret ballot, but I had the Prime Minister of Barbados on this show 2 weeks ago, and she was very forthcoming about Barbados' support for Canada at the Security Council. Is the reason that you're not willing to tell us because you didn't vote, because Ukraine didn't vote for Canada?
No, it's really the sign of a sign of respect towards the tradition. What I can say, Vassy, that you know how Ukraine treats Canada, and we really see you as a very close friend, as a country which is very dear to our heart. And I can say that there were many Ukrainians who kept fingers crossed for Canada in this competition. And again, we are going to work with Canada and with those countries who are this time on the Security Council to make the world better.
Okay, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you very much, Ambassador. I appreciate your time this evening.
Thank you, Vassy. Thanks for bringing me in.